Hi everyone, Elle Hackney here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel where I get to speak to everyone in the book community, whether they be authors, illustrators, podcasters, or industry professionals. And today I have an author who started as a journalist, then became a published author of many books, but also now offers an amazing array of author services. Susan Mackie, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm loving this incredible journey of yours. It's just so vibrant and it seems like you've stuck your finger in a lot of pies. So can you explain to us all how this all happens?
And look, it is a funny story. And, I think sometimes I'm a bit of an accidental, writer. I did want to be a writer from the age of 8. Actually, I wrote a little book when I was 8. And my teacher loved it so much that he wouldn't give it to my parents. He kept it. And I think I was reading a lot of Enid Blyton at the time, so it was, about a little red car, and me and my friend Timmy jumped in it and we had adventures. And, I think I drew all the pictures and everything. Anyway, I wanted to be a writer from probably the moment I could read. And I went to this tiny, tiny school of like 18 children, the whole school, 18 children when up until the age of 10. And we just had a really limited library. And I remember my father laughing because he was a smoker. And I would read the back of the redhead matchbox things. I'd read everything. Just crazy wanting to read. And I read all my books, hundreds of times. I think we didn't have a proper library and all of that. And I think I just grew up wanting to be a writer. But when we moved from that tiny little town, or I was a farm girl, from that tiny little area to a bigger school and like 300 children in the primary school, and I think I arrived at the end of grade 4, and they had a library. Oh my gosh, how exciting was that? I kept saying, I want to be a writer, I want to be a writer. And by high school, my school advisors were going, yeah, that's not really a thing. You can't really make money from that. Journalism's probably the way to go. And, I am a bit of an outgoing optimist. And they're going, you'd be good in PR. I didn't even know what PR was. But so I went that, actually, I didn't really go that way. My whole life is an accident, really. I finished school, still in a relatively small town, still on a farm. And my father said, if you don't get a job, you have to work on the farm. And I'm like, yeah, I've milked a lot of cows. I'm kind of done with that. And the HSC results came out. We're in New South Wales. And I was like in the top 2% of the state for the English result. So yay. And the editor of the local newspaper called the farm, spoke to my mum. I was actually milking cows with my dad. Spoke to my mum when those results came out and offered me a cadetship as a journalist. So yeah, really accidental. And then they started me at Deakin University, sort of by correspondence and whatever. And by the time I'd been working with them for a year, and then I transitioned to a D-grade journalist role in Melbourne. And that was a bit accidental too, because they were looking for someone fully qualified and I wasn't, but I kind of bluffed my way into an interview. And I think the headhunter that interviewed me sent me up to the editor of the next newspaper I worked for. They were rugby mates. And I think I was like the joke candidate. I was the wild card. Check out this feisty little girl. I was only 19. Everyone else was 21 or 22.
Wow. Yeah.
And he gave me the job.
How good is that?
So, anyway. So, a few years in Melbourne, and then I was offered a role in Sydney, mostly because I was the only person that was single and could move in a hurry because the role was like needed someone straight away. I'd never been to Sydney, but I went, yeah, let's do that. To Sydney. And really, I think the thing that I started my first little publishing business at the age of about 25. My real maiden name is Tyrrell, so I'm Susan Mackie Tyrrell. Mackie is my Scottish grandmother's maiden name, so Mackie is a family name. But anyway, so I had this little business called Tyrrell Publishing in Milsons Point, right under the Harbour Bridge. I lived in Kirribilli, living the dream, all of that. And I did that off the back of desktop publishing because, oh my gosh, you could write to fit the space. I did a lot of work with Australian Consolidated Press, teaching some of the writers to use the desktop publishing software in some of their magazines. They had 13 magazines and, anyway, a whole long story, but I really like business and I really like having control, and I'll just shut up now.
No, because I love this. So how did then Okay, clearly publishing pro as well. Let's add that to the mix. What made you then start actually writing your own books and putting them out there?
Yeah, so a really long journey. So back then when I was Terrell Publishing for a few years until I got married, and I was still working for the new owners of the business like the day I had my first child, because I'm like, yeah, Dad said to me, you're pregnant, you're not sick. So I just kept working. Anyway, yeah, so I had all of that going on, but I really liked business. And I married, he's now my ex-husband, but I married an Austrian chef who was the caterer at Curabilix Services Club, like 8,000 meals a week out of 3 kitchens, like big operation. I used to eat there a lot because, I didn't cook. And it could be one of the reasons I married him. It's probably not the only reason, but it could be one of them.
It helped.
But he was really entrepreneurial. And I think in reality, maybe we should have been business partners because we were both entrepreneurial. He read English really well, didn't write it at all well. So I kind of took over the businessy side. We had a chocolate factory at one stage. We had several sort of catering businesses. Then we moved to the Barrington area, which is the area I write about. And we were there for 10 years. And that's where we raised our 2 daughters to begin with. And we built a tourist resort on 2,000 acres of timber and rainforest. And he was the chef, and it was like we were ahead of the time. We were 5-star, AAA rated 5-star, and 10 kind of Austrian style chalets. And we had tennis court and swimming pool and 4-wheel drive tours. Look, it was an amazing place. But, you work 7 days a week, 3 meals a day, Christmas, everything. And in one of my books, The Bee Whisperer, I burnt it down. It's a bit of a excuse my finger, to the ex-husband.
I knew talking to you was going to be fun, Susan. I knew it.
But so along the way, me and he did all of those things. And then we've got 2 girls, and one's like academically really clever. And the other one is very clever but dyslexic. And in that local small area, I was worried about high school and filling the needs of both my daughters, who had quite different educational needs. And somehow or other, I talked him into selling up. Well, we sold up, and then we reinvested in the town, and we built another place called the Great Escape Lofts in Gloucester, which is the small town next to Barrington. And it's still running. And actually one of my ex-employees owns it now. And we had a restaurant and all of that. But then only about 18 months into that, I found the Gold Coast, 26 private schools on the Gold Coast. And I'm like, we just got to move somewhere like that for the girls to get what they need. And so we moved to the Gold Coast, and he didn't want to cook anymore. So we went into real estate. I really wanted to go back to newspapers. And actually, I was offered a job on the Gold Coast Bulletin, but old mate wouldn't take responsibility for the girls and drive them to school or do any of that. So I had to knock it back. He just wanted me to keep working with him because I had the marketing skills. He was a very hard worker, don't get me wrong. Even the real estate course, we did it together. I didn't really want to do it. We did it together so I could give him the answers in English, because he didn't write well in English. So, and not that he doesn't know the stuff. I'm not being disrespectful, but you know what? And so we had those businesses and whatever. And then, the marriage ended, and I still we had 3 agencies by that stage on the Gold Coast. We closed one, he took one, I took one. We split the rent roll. I managed that for another 4 years until my daughters finished high school, because it was a good income. I didn't love it. I wasn't passionate about it, but, I was good at it. Do you know what I mean? And had a nice little team and everything. And I really just wanted to go back to my roots. And I pretty much sold the business, and within the same month was offered a job as editor of Travelling in Australia magazine. So I did that for another 18 months, and shit pay, seriously, nothing like what I was earning in real estate, but it gave gave kind of street cred to my qualifications, which were really, really old by that stage, because I'm really, really old. And, 18 months of that, and I'm like, yeah, I've got my street cred. And then I was offered a fabulous role with Gold Coast Tourism, and I worked with them for several years. So it really wasn't until my girls left school and left home that I went, it's my time to write. And I think as women, one of the things, well, this is certainly true for me, but I do see it with other women, that the way we're raised is, your stuff comes last. Like, the family's got to be happy, the house is clean, the meals are cooked, the shirts are ironed, and you're working full time, but you're still doing all that other stuff. And then it's like, when can I carve out time to write? And it's almost like a dirty little secret, or it's like that treat that you get for being a really good girl, instead of prioritizing and going, no, this is my passion. This is what I want. I'm not following old mates' dreams anymore. I'm doing what I want. And by this time I'd found bloke. And when the girls left home, we made a home together. And I thought, I'm just going to put my foot down. I'm going to be stronger. Writing's my thing. I want to write. And then we'd made a home for a few years, and then we moved out here to Warwick, to a country town. That was my idea. He'd never lived in the country, but he loves it. And I set up this writing room, and I just got back to it, writing short stories and so on. And then in 2019, I was working in a govy job in Toowoomba, because I thought getting a job in Warwick would be really easy. Not so much. I was overqualified for everything. I'm like, I'll take anything. Anyway, I was driving to Toowoomba every day, so it's like a 2.5-hour round trip, and working 5 days a week. But I carved out this space and this time for myself, and I wrote Charlie's Will. There you go. And I'll be really quiet now. I'm sorry. I'm such a
wrangler. Because look, I've stalked your website, and I've read all about you, and I found you so intriguing. And one of the questions I wanted to ask was, because you offer self-publishing services, and I'm self-published, and with my journey, I wouldn't take anything back. I'm so glad I've done it that way. But I remember thinking, okay, well, how do I know when it's actually okay to put it out there? But now I'm listening to your journey. You've had so much editorial experience, publishing experience. Did that help you know when to put your books out?
I think there was a little bit of that. Yes, having journalism is a great skill to have in, pretty much in any small business, because, if you know how to write and deliver marketing messages and so forth. But it is quite different to creative writing, because journalism's who, what, when, where, why, and how, and 25 words or less, and we're going to be able to cut every paragraph from the bottom, and the reader would never know. This is in newspapers, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So it is a slightly different discipline. So you have to kind of switch into your, creative, right brainy stuff. That's right, isn't it? Right brain is the creative, and left brain. Anyway, so you have to do the switch. But I think for me, it's a little bit of I do have issues of control. So I've never pitched. I wanted to self-publish, and maybe there was a little bit of, now I'm saying that, maybe there was a little bit of, I was afraid to pitch, like I didn't want the rejections, but also it was about time. I felt like I'd wasted so much time. I should have been doing this 30 years ago when I first married, what's his name? And I was at home for 6 months with my first daughter. It's the only time I've never worked. And I was writing, but the minute he walked in the door, I'd like close the lid of the computer and rush to make him a cup of tea. Do you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah,
with me now.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it was about, I had a cousin who very sadly has passed away a couple of years ago, very suddenly, but she was an editor as well, and doing a lot with creative writing. And she edited Charlie's Will for me. And in fact, the first, I thought I'd finished it, because, journalism's a bit less is more. I don't do a lot of fluffy descriptions. I don't do a lot of extra words. And that's the journalism part coming out. And I sent her the first manuscript. It was 37,000 words. I've gone, you know what? I'm done. I'm finished. It's going to be a novella. What do you think? And my cousin, who's also a Sue, came back to me after reading it, in one big gulp, she said, and using a few words which I won't repeat here. She's like, what the, Susan, seriously, you've got a great story here, but like pad it out a bit. And what's with this guy? And she's a walking sex assault victim here. You need to cut that bit out and whatever. And I've gone, oh. And she said, and I was a bit of a pantser. And she's like, here's a spreadsheet I use. Maybe you should kind of plot pants, and plot down where you are with your 37,000 words. Look at my notes and see where you could add a bit more subplot and develop that side character a bit more and so on. And I went, oh, yeah, okay. Well, I think it took me a year to write the 37,000 words. I was working full time. And it took me like 3 weeks to write the next 30,000, and it's a 67,000 word novel. And I sent it back to her, and she's like, you've done well. And we revised it a couple of times a little bit, and then I just let it go. because at some time you've got to go, I like it. She likes it. Nobody else had read it, not even Bloke. He doesn't read them until they come in the box, printed. And I remember, and I didn't know much, and I loaded it up onto Amazon, and she was all about traditional publishing. She's going, this is good. You should pitch that. And I'm like, yeah, no, I want it out. So, so I loaded it up onto Amazon, like between Christmas and New Year for a 4th or 5th of January release day. I didn't know I'd put it on pre-order. I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't know I could even go in and see how many pre-orders I'd sold, and not many, but some. And then on the day it dropped, I'm sitting with Bloke on the couch the night before and going, a few family and friends might buy it. I don't know, but I've done it. I've written something of length and I've done it. Woohoo. And this thing dropped, and it dropped way more than I thought, because I had all those pre-orders I didn't know about. And it dropped and it sold a bit. And then like 2 days later, this fabulous woman who's become a friend now, Diane, in Northern Queensland or Middle Queensland, bought it. Like, she didn't know me, and she just bought it. She liked the cover. She bought it, read it, reviewed it, gave it 5 stars. In fact, it made me cry. Okay, it was the first Amazon review, written review, apart from a rating, gave it 5 stars. And this thing just started to sell like crazy. Like, I've sold 10,000 of these things. I mean, it's just a crazy. And this is the first one. I'm going to hold it up here, Charlie's Will. And that cover is an original watercolour painting by my friend Fiona Hayes, who is a watercolour artist here in Warwick. And she's done 4 of these for me, and she's painting the current story now. And I don't know if it was the cover, that got Diane's interest, but whatever the hell it was. And also, I'm a journalist, right? Rose knew one thing: the farm would be hers when Charlie died. And I don't know. I think it just, anyway, it did well. And I know a lot more now.
Well, see, I love this because I hear, I'm self-published, so I know how many books I've sold, but I've heard from so many traditional published authors where they'll get their 6 monthly statement, and in that 6 months, they have no idea where they're sitting. So to be able to say straight away, I've sold 10,000 books, yeah, that's remarkable. Do you?
That's in 5 years, nearly 5 years. It's not. Yeah. It wasn't an overnight success, but anyway, I'll be quiet.
But it's still something to be proud of. Do you find now, because you've got a bit of clout there, Susan, do you find when you ever do mix in the writing community and you come across traditional publishers, do you find that they're interested in your journey?
Oh, definitely. I think what I found with the traditional publishers that I meet, traditional writers that I'm meeting, is they're so bloody inclusive and collaborative. And honestly, there's a little bit of me that still feels a bit intimidated. And I think, I'm not sure if you know the last book, and there's a story about this, but the last book, the Barrington Book Club, I had this idea, and I thought, what if I wanted the book club, and I wanted to punctuate a year with 12 book club meetings in a way of giving the culmination of all the characters in the other books as sort of a way of moving their journeys on and showing where they are now, and also having something really major go on in this particular book, and how they deal with that. And then I thought, well, the 12, could they read real books? Could they read real books in my book? Could my book club read real books? And so then I contacted a few people, and Rachel Johns, and some great people, Craig Silvey. My characters read a children's book, but you know what, best children's book in 2023, children's book of the year. I mean, it's an amazing book. And so I contacted all these people, and they all gave me their blessing. Yes, you can. And of course, my character readers, loved the books, but some went, it was a bit complicated for me, or I listened to it on audio, or I didn't really like it until I listened to it on audio. That was Brian Brown's book, The Drowning. And I will say, I had Apples Never Fall by Leanne Moriarty and The Drowning by Brian Brown, and they were the 2 authors I didn't contact because I was just way too scaredy cat. but it's so a lot of the books, about half of the books in my Barrington Book Club were indie and half traditional. And honestly, they were so inclusive and collaborative. they've come onto my posts and they've talked about it and they've promoted my book. And hey, I didn't really think that through, but that was an added bonus. And it's just been a great journey. But I've just found in Australia particularly, the ones that I've met either in person or via socials are so welcoming and collaborative. And sometimes they even ask me stuff and I'm like, really? Thank you, because I ask them a lot of stuff and it's great.
Well, you do have an impressive list of services. Can you please tell us all, Susan, what you do offer so everyone can contact you?
Oh, I thank you. In the beginning, I did talk about think about self-publishing for other authors, and I did self-publish for one older lady that just didn't have the wherewithal to do it herself. But now I more mentor other authors, so I do a lot of editing and helping them with their products, getting it publication ready. And I help with covers and formatting. I use Vellum. I'm a desktop publishing queen. All of that stuff's really easy. I do my own covers, for example. I do all my own posts and marketing and flyers and things. So I offer all of those services, but then I won't publish for them because then I'd be taking money like some of those vanity publishers, but I'll hold their hand to get them publishing themselves. And with first-time authors, I just say, just go with one platform. Just start with Amazon and KU and get it rolling and learn how to check your platforms. And let's start with, a couple of Facebook ads, which I'll help set up for you. And let's just get it rolling. And then once they get confident, and if they do a website store, again, I don't do that for them, but I can hook them up for that and get a website store going and so forth. Then they might want to stretch their wings and go wide or do more things. But basically, I'm really offering editing, formatting, covers, a bit of Facebook advertising and so forth, and a bit of hand-holding. And I will say with my editing clients, I don't really charge much for the hand-holding bit. It's kind of like, I really want them to succeed. I want them to just get up there and get going. And yeah, so it's great. I'm doing a really interesting project at the moment, a nonfiction book for a woman who's 40 years of domestic violence. And basically she has documented every single conversation. She kept a journal, every single conversation, and later on every email, every text message, everything. And it's kind of heartbreakingly amazing, but we're releasing that soon. When I say we, she is, but I'm doing the hand-holding bit. It's called Seriously. So it's got seriously ? And then seriously. Like it's quite an amazing journal. But, I generally don't jump out of my lane for editing. And I do edit for some authors that are that have another editor, but maybe they're in a tight spot with another book and so forth. So my friend Philippa Neffrey-Clark, I've edited one for her. I do a little bit for Ellen Reid. Couple of new authors, newish, Kelly Cameron and Tony Dingle. So it's fun, and I love working with them, and I love seeing their books go from something, in the case of the new authors, a bit raw, to something really really readable, really engaging. And in the case of the Philippas and the Ellen Reids and so forth, honestly, it's so polished already by the time it gets to me that it's really not a huge amount of work, and I charge them a much lower rate because they know what they're doing. Yeah.
No, I do understand. So, so any genre, just contact yourself. That sounds like you're really open, which is fantastic. Yeah.
And I'll take 2 or 3 paragraphs in 2 or 3 chapters and see if I want to edit it. And, I have turned one down that just didn't float my boat. And I'm like, I just don't think I could do it justice. And things like maybe romantasy or sci-fi and stuff, I don't read a lot of that. So I think it would be harder for me to edit it, but I read quite broadly. I read much more broadly than I write. So anything that I'm kind of reading, I'll look at editing.
So you've dipped your toes in many waters there, Susan. I would love to know what's next for you.
So I'm currently writing the next Barrington book. It's called The Secret Reader. And I'm really excited about it. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's kind of, the book club is continuing a little bit. There's a few book club meetings throughout it. And we're also doing something that I haven't done in a book before, but I like doing things a little bit different. It's got there's an opportunity to set up a particular type of business, and a few of the characters have a sort of a brainstorm meeting, and they do a SWOT on, because, remember, I've been in a lot of businesses. They do a SWOT for this business, and I actually have the SWOT in the book and how they brainstorm and throw the ideas around to get to an action plan to actually go, could we really do this? Is this a viable business? And I'm like, anyone that wants to start a small business, you need to read this,
Yeah, educational as well.
Yeah.
And do you have a favorite book?
I knew you were going to ask me that. Pillars of the Earth, Ken Follett. Oh my gosh, like, I've read it so many times. And I keep thinking I should buy like the new hardback version, and because I've got all of Ken Follett's books on my bookshelf, and you can probably see I've got a big bookshelf. But this story, and I'm going to say I read it on my honeymoon. Don't laugh. We were going to Europe, but anyway, we did this small trip pre the honeymoon of honeymoons to Tasmania. We got married in Sydney, and we went to Tasmania, I'm going to say, for about 9 or 10 days. And I bought this book at the Sydney airport, and I started reading it on the plane, and I just fell in love with it. Absolutely loved it. Was devouring it. I was even reading in the car a bit, which, as we're driving around Tasmania, which made me feel sick. And then we were at the casino, and old mate, my Austrian chefy husband, really liked to play blackjack, and he thought I'd be fascinated watching him do that. Yeah, not so much. So I'd stand at the blackjack table after dinner, kind of going, well, you know what, darling, I'm going to go to the room, take your time. I'm going to slip into that little peignoir that my mum bought for me, for the honeymoon thing, and I'll be waiting for you, but you take your time. And I'd get up to the room. I'd get that bloody nightie on so quick, and I'd be there like reading. And the minute I heard his key in the door, I'd shove the book under the bed, and I'd be laying back going, darling, you're here. Hello. Anyway, I finished the book on the honeymoon, and it's like 1,000,000 pages. It's about 1,000 pages. I finished the book on the honeymoon, and I was cruising the book library at the Hobart airport, and he turned to me and he said, oh, darling, you did not like that book so much. It was a big book. You get a smaller book this time. And I'm like, yeah, getting a smaller book. I finished the damn thing, took it home, gave it to all my friends, but please give it back to me. So yeah, Ken Follett. So I'm still in love with Ken Follett, not so much with the ex-husband.
And it seems like you've read it a couple of times there, Susan.
Oh yeah. It's kind of my, and I don't know why. I read basically a book a week, and I've got a huge TBR pile, but every now and again I'm just like, I just need to read Pillars of, and every time he brings out a new one, because there's been a prequel and a couple of sequels, I kind of read this one again in order, but I'm sure other people have their favorite book stories too.
Now, can I just go a little sideways for a minute? Because, gosh, you're so accomplished. You're like businesswoman, PR pro, publishing pro, journalist, self-published author, 5 stars, thousands of copies. Like, I am just in awe of everything you've done. But have you thought of screenwriting and putting your books into a screenplay?
A few people have said that to me, and and I love it when they do, because I think, these are my mega. I have fans. I sit on the couch sometimes and say to them, I have fans. Like,
yes,
what
do? You have a following.
It's so funny. But at the Romance Writers of Australia conference in August in Adelaide this year, in Glenelg, I did do the workshop on screenwriting, which I found absolutely fascinating. And it's something I'm really interested in. I mean, maybe not right now, but, in the future. So I'm writing that. I've got, after this, The Secret Reader for the Barrington series, I've got one more book kind of in me for that series. But I'm also researching at the moment a trilogy, a bit more women's fiction than romance. 3 strong women across the sort of the last century, connected by family, but not directly. 3 really powerful female protagonist stories, and we're hoping to go to Scotland in 2025. I've got to do a little bit of research over there, because my grandmother came from Scotland, and Mackie is my Scottish grandmother's name. And so I've got that trilogy to do as well. So that's going to be sort of modern historical, but I'll keep doing my Barringtons. These characters, they just keep talking to me. They keep jostling for space on the page. In fact, Harry, who I'm writing now, and Harry, we first found Harry in, he was the son in Ragged Mountain Rangers. And then he kind of fell in love with the Bee Whisperer in The Bee Whisperer, but he lucked out. Oh, spoiler. And Harry, honestly, Harry's been like emailing me saying, like, when can I get my love? You know, it's my turn. When am I getting my story? So I'm giving Harry a bit of a romance in the current book. Like, seriously, he was getting so feisty about it. I think he moved into my back room. He's like there at breakfast going, Susan, write my story.
Yeah. A little bit demanding, but I love it. So, okay, so more novels at the moment.
Definitely more novels. And I have one notable Australian that I have a sort of connection through Bloke's family, who has asked me to write her memoir. And we're talking about that, but we haven't started that. I'm actually looking to see if I could maybe get a government grant to write that story. So, yeah, I'm investigating that. There's a thing, I don't know if you know them, the RADF grants. They're certainly quite big in Queensland. So I'm looking at applying for a RADF grant when it opens again, to see if I can grab some money to spend some time with her and write her story. So that's kind of like a little side thing. And her husband keeps saying to us, if you don't write it, she won't let anyone else write it if you don't do it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the pressure. But it's only because she knows me and she trusts me, you know, or she doesn't know me well, but she does know me. Yeah.
I mean, that's a compliment, but pressure. So I was just going to say, everyone watching this video, make sure you contact Susan for a service, but it sounds like you're so busy.
But you know what? I firstly want to say thank you so much for having me here. But I really love engaging with people, and whether you're a writer or a reader or an emerging writer or whatever, just contact me on my socials or through my emails. And if you've got questions, I'll answer them. You know, I certainly don't know everything, and I know a lot more than I did when I didn't know about pre-orders when Charlie's Will came out. But certainly know a lot more than that now. But you know, it's a constantly evolving, as you know yourself, and a constantly evolving sort of industry. And I think sometimes it's hard not to fall behind. And I try to keep up with stuff, you know. And I'm going to tell you a secret now. I don't do TikTok. I'm scared of it. I'm scared of it. It's the whole Chinese-owned thing and the whatever. Anyway, I don't do TikTok. You know, like, and I know everyone's going, BookTok is great and all of that. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just not going to do it. I'm just not.
For me, it's Facebook and Instagram, and she's at capacity. Like, yeah. I feel like I've learnt those two. That's enough. I'm bowing out.
Yeah. And sometimes, and that's what I say to my new writers that are doing their first book, you know, pick a platform like an Amazon and maybe your website for your printed books, and pick a you know, Instagram and Facebook, or Pinterest and Facebook, or whatever, you know, wherever you are showing up, wherever your people are showing up, and just do one or two and do them really well, because I think you can just stretch too thinly. And yeah, that's my little bit of advice.
No, I completely agree. Susan, I'm so grateful to chat to you today. But if anyone's watching this video and wants to contact Susan, make sure you check out her socials, check out her website. Make sure you do support Susan, though, because she does give back to the community, and she's very open and she's very approachable. So we want to make sure Susan stays in this game for a very long time. Susan, thank you so much for today. I thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you.
So much fun. You're gorgeous and you look gorgeous. I wanted to say that right at the start. You look beautiful. And thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful. I can't thank you enough. The exposure's great too. And it's just been nice getting to know you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. But we'll chat again soon.
Thank you very much.